There's a lot of buzz and pandemonium being generated by this Luka trade, and in some cases hysteria, especially if you're a Mavericks fan. You're losing your mind from what I've seen online, all these reactions, which is understandable. It was unexpected, and Luka was their franchise player, so I definitely get that on their side. But I've seen it everywhere, even for people who are not fans of either of these teams. Just these reactions have been out of this world. They've been fun and whatnot. You've had people angry that the Lakers were able to get Luka, who are not Maverick or Laker fans, simply because they felt the Lakers got bailed out getting Luka this easily without having to give up much. Grant Anthony Davis is a legit star. He's still a top 20 player in my eyes in this league, so it's not like they traded Luka for a scrub, but I definitely get that. I definitely get the anger and the frustration because the Lakers now have a generational talent in which they can build their next championship team around. He's only 25 years old. Granted, he's out of shape, and they're betting that being in LA will be motivation for him to just get his act together. But we'll see. Grant, I do understand just the uproar about this trade and just the commotion it's causing all over social media. Just there's a lot of buzz being generated for this trade. With that being said, I don't think this is like the biggest trade in NBA history. And I think that's subjective when I say this biggest trade. My definition of biggest trade is like a trade that sends ripples all across the league, has a huge impact on determining who will win, championships in the future. Just a humongous ripple. Just granted, this is a pretty big ripple, I would say, but I wouldn't say it's like the biggest trade of all time. And I'm just looking back as a historian of the game. Granted, I wasn't around during the time when this trade happened. It was during the 70s. But in my eyes, the biggest trade in NBA history was the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar trade to the Los Angeles Lakers when the Bucks traded him to the Lakers. That trade happened during the summertime on June 16th of 1975. I've seen some historical videos randomly on YouTube about this trade, and just like the reactions people had from the actual moment, like the actual media footage of the reactions back then to this trade. And it was pretty big. It was just, I think even national news, this trade made the headlines back then, which was a big deal since people didn't have the internet, YouTube, or any of that stuff. The only medium in which they can get their information was through TV. So it was all across the country. So that trade to me was even bigger than this Luka trade because at that time, historically, Kareem was a known commodity. He had won, I think, 3 championships at UCLA. He was hailed as one of the greatest players of all time just coming out of college. The whole entire country knew who he was. He went to the Bucks and he did win a championship, I believe, in his second year in the league. So he was already established, along with winning, I think, a few MVP awards by then. Everyone knew who he was. He was the best player in the league during that time period. He was the best player, literally the best player. Whereas I feel Luka is a top 5, top 6 player when he's healthy and he's in shape. He's an MVP caliber player, but I wouldn't say he's the best player in the league. Not yet. Could he possibly be the best player in the league if he gets his act together? Yeah, there's a chance, but I wouldn't say he's the best. But to me, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar trade was even bigger than the Luka trade. I feel like the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar trade today would be the equivalent of like someone like Jokic or Giannis getting traded to the Lakers for nothing. Great, I hope I didn't speak in existence. I definitely don't want to see that happening, but that's what it would be like because the Lakers really didn't give up much to get Kareem. They gave up some role players. None of these guys are real stars, and they got Kareem just that easily. So I think that's why that trade is like the biggest trade in NBA history, and also because the future ramifications that trade had on the league. Kareem would eventually go on to win 5 titles with the Lakers and be part of the 80s Showtime dynasty. If that trade doesn't go down, the league's history is altered, and you have different results, different teams winning championships. That trade prevented a bunch of teams from being champions during the 80s simply by that trade happening. So in my eyes, the Kareem trade was like the biggest trade in NBA history when you measure the impact that trade had on a franchise and just people knowing just who Kareem was. Just he was known. I don't think general people really know who Luka is. Granted, he's one of the best players in the league, but just Kareem was known. He was already the best player in the league. He was already a champion. Something Luka isn't. He had already won a few MVPs. That to me really puts that trade above the Luka trade. Now it'll take us some years to see the ramifications of this trade. It's going to really depend on who the Lakers put around Luka. Luka ends up winning a few championships with the Lakers, then this trade definitely will be up there with the Kareem trade. I know some people will mention the yeah, I was about to say like I know some people will mention the Kobe Bryant trade and say that was up there with this trade, but I would say Kobe Bryant was not a known entity when he was drafted by the Hornets. No one knew who he was. So when that trade happened, everyone just looked at him as some random high schooler. So that's why to me at the time it wasn't as big as a Kareem trade or even this trade because Luka's already established star while Kobe wasn't. So I know some people will bring that up, but I don't believe it's up there with the Kareem trade. So to me, the Kareem trade will always go down as like the biggest trade in NBA history. If anyone disagrees with that, they can voice it out in the comments. Let me know if there's any other trades that they think were bigger than this trade.